The cargo bay of the Xinthian warship hummed with hostile energy as Commander Velthor circled his prize. Captain Elsa Chen stood in the center of the containment field, her dark eyes tracking every movement of the insectoid alien's chitinous form. Behind her, bound and bloodied, Lieutenant Riza Malik struggled against his restraints. "Your species confuses me, human," Velthor clicked, his translator struggling with the nuances of contempt. "You are soft, weak, yet you resist when resistance is illogical." Elsa's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You're not the first to make that mistake. The Xinthian had ambushed their reconnaissance vessel 3 hours ago, overwhelming their shields with quantum disruptors. Standard procedure would have been to destroy the human ship entirely, but Velthor had heard stories. Humans were valuable not as warriors but as curiosities, specimens to be studied, dissected, understood. "Disarm her," Velthor commanded his guards. Elsa slowly raised her hands above her head, fingers splayed. "That's your first mistake." The guards hesitated, their compound eyes reflecting confusion. She wore no visible weapons. Their scans had detected nothing. What could this fragile creature possibly mean? Velthor chittered with laughter. Brave words from one who was already defeated. "Tell me, Captain Chen, what makes humanity think it can stand among the starfaring races? You have no natural armor. No venom, no exoskeleton. You fracture so easily." "You're right," Elsa said, her voice steady. "We break easily. That's why we learn to improvise." Riza, still slumped against the wall, caught Elsa's eye. Despite the pain medication in his system, he understood. They'd trained for this. Humans always trained for the worst-case scenario because in the galaxy's hierarchy, they were newcomers. Soft, squishy newcomers surrounded by species that had evolved for millennia in harsher environments. "Your scanners are impressive," Elsa continued conversationally. "They can detect weapons, explosives, even biological threats. But you know what they can't detect? Knowledge, strategy, spite." Velthor's mandibles twitched, annoyance. "Guard, if she moves, sever her limbs." The guard approached, plasma rifle leveled. Elsa remained perfectly still as he reached for her raised hands. The moment his chitinous claw touched her wrist, she moved. Humans weren't the fastest species. They weren't the strongest. But evolution had gifted them something unique. Endurance, adaptability, and hands with opposable thumbs capable of complex manipulation. Elsa grabbed the guard's weapon arm, using his own forward momentum against him. She twisted, leveraging her entire body weight, a move that would have been impossible for the rigid Xinthian physiology. The plasma rifle discharged into the ceiling. Sparks rained down as Elsa rolled beneath the guard, her fingers finding the breathing spiracles along his thorax. She'd studied Xinthian anatomy during the 3-hour captivity, memorizing every structural weakness. One sharp strike and the guard collapsed, unable to draw oxygen. "Second mistake," Elsa said, now armed with the plasma rifle. "Assuming weapons are the only things that make us dangerous." The containment field flickered. Riza had been working on it the entire time, using a piece of shrapnel from their destroyed ship to short-circuit the emitters. His engineering background had taught him that every system had vulnerabilities. You just had to be patient enough to find them. Velthor screeched orders, but Elsa was already moving. The cargo bay erupted into chaos. She fired precisely, targeting support beams and ammunition caches with the intimate knowledge of starship architecture that every human captain memorized. If you couldn't outfight your enemies, you outthought them. Riza broke free, limping to the weapons cache. "Elsa, left flank." She dove behind a container as plasma fire scorched the air where she'd stood. Humans had another advantage: communication. While most species relied on pheromones or infrared signals that could be jammed, humans used language, infinitely flexible and creative. "Remember the Alamo Protocol?" Riza shouted, tossing her an improvised explosive. "The one we invented last Tuesday during poker night?" Elsa caught it smoothly. "That's the one." They moved in synchronization, years of training and friendship translating into wordless coordination. The Alamo Protocol, named jokingly after a historic last stand, was actually a boarding maneuver. Humans excelled at making things up on the fly, turning desperate situations into opportunities. Elsa set the explosive against the airlock controls while Riza provided covering fire. Velthor realized too late what they intended. "Stop them. They'll decompress the entire bay." "Third mistake." Elsa said, meeting Velthor's horrified gaze. Thinking we value our own survival over completing the mission? She triggered the explosive. The airlock blew open and emergency protocols engaged, but not before Elsa and Riza had sealed themselves in their ship's recovered emergency pod. They'd spent their captivity mapping the bay, locating their equipment, planning. As the Xinthian warship scrambled to contain the breach, the pod launched, its distress beacon already transmitting to the human fleet. Elsa and Riza had done more than escape. They'd gathered intelligence, proven human resilience, and sent a message to every species watching. You think they learned anything? Riza asked, checking their injuries. Elsa monitored the approaching human rescue vessels, their transponders like welcome beacons in the dark. They learned that humans don't need armor or venom. We have something better: stubbornness, creativity, and each other. The pod sailed toward safety, leaving behind a warship full of aliens who had just learned why humanity, despite being physically inferior, refused to be dismissed. They broke easily, yes, but they also adapted faster, thought more creatively, and fought more cleverly than any species that had evolved with natural advantages. In the galaxy's grand hierarchy, humanity had found its niche, not as the strongest or fastest, but as the species that turned every disadvantage into a weapon, and every mistake their enemies made into an opportunity. And that Commander Velthor would report was humanity's most terrifying trait.